Let's call the police. The incident happened at the wedding of my eldest son and his wife. The $3,000 we, as a couple, had gifted our eldest son for his wedding had somehow been switched out like a magic trick, replaced with just $10. It was a clear case of theft. I suggested to my son and husband that we should report this to the police. Both agreed with me. However, one person, not present, voiced their opposition. My name is Natalie, and I turned 60 this year. I've been married to my husband for 27 years. Blessed with a son and a daughter, I believe we've built a modest but happy family. My daughter is already married, leaving my eldest son's marriage as the only concern. Not to say I favor him, but my son, Kenneth, is quite the accomplished young man. Kind-hearted, tall, well-educated, and well-earning. He's a son to be proud of, and naturally, I wished for his marriage to be a cautious decision. It seems he has finally found someone to settle down with. My husband and I were anxious, waiting to see what kind of woman our eldest son would bring home. Ever since our son mentioned, "I've found someone I want to marry," we didn't make any plans on the weekends, just waiting. But there was no word of any visit for an introduction. It seems my son had already visited her family's side to greet them. Certainly, it's common sense to greet the other side first with a "please allow us to marry." Still, once done, shouldn't he promptly arrange a visit for us too? I thought about urging my son, but hesitated, not wanting to be a nuisance. A month passed without any greeting from his partner. My husband, having put aside his golf plans during the weekends, was growing increasingly irritable. We wanted to avoid any conflict before the marriage, as dealing with my husband's sour mood can be quite a task. So, "I'd like you to introduce us to the person you're seeing," I casually mentioned to my son. To which my son responded with a troubled look. "I've asked, but our schedules aren't lining up," he said. Apparently, her job keeps her busy, leaving no time for a visit. When I asked about her weekends, it seems she prefers to relax then, as weekdays are hectic. It's understandable. Anyone working weekdays would want their weekends to rest. Surely, my son must feel the same deep down. He seemed to understand that this excuse wouldn't fly. Otherwise, he wouldn't look so troubled. "Look, if you're going to get married, there needs to be some formality. Please bring her home properly. If Dad gets upset, marriage will be the least of your worries," I said. My son, with a solemn look, nodded. And then, "I'll make sure to bring her for the introduction," he assured. Trusting my eldest son's words, I decided to wait a bit longer. After our talk, he contacted us the following Sunday, saying he would bring her over. When I informed my husband, he reluctantly accepted, and I felt relieved. We were both tense, waiting from the morning of that day. A little after noon, "I'm on my way now," our son messaged us. The woman who arrived was as beautiful as a model. Even more stunning than any celebrity you'd see around, leaving both my husband and me astonished. She introduced herself as Amelia and mentioned she was 4 years older than our son. At 30, her manners were impeccable, leaving a good impression. I thought she seemed like the type who could lead my overly gentle son. Apparently, she's a magazine model. "I wanted to greet you sooner, but if I don't rest enough on the weekends, it affects my work the following week." "I'm sorry," Amelia said, apologizing gracefully. Being a model, her body is her asset. It made sense that carrying over fatigue to the next week isn't professional. "Will you continue working after getting married?" I asked, intending it to be a light question. To this, Amelia's face turned visibly displeased. Surprised by her reaction, I was taken aback when she responded, "Is that the first thing you ask when I come to greet?" "Yes, I plan to continue working." Is there a problem? Her sudden confrontational tone caught me off guard. Maybe the topic of working post-marriage was a taboo for her. After that, no matter what my husband and I asked, Amelia had a sulky attitude. Our son, sitting beside her, desperately tried to appease her mood. To no avail. Are we done here? I have a photo shoot on Monday, so I'd like to rest. I heard from Kenneth that you were rushing us for a greeting. Can't you consider our schedule? Maybe Natalie doesn't understand because she's never worked? Amelia said, crossing her arms and looking down on me disdainfully. Honestly, I was at a loss for words. Would someone normally act this way when visiting their future spouse's home? It was beyond my comprehension. My husband's expression also turned grim. Only the concerned look from my son, worried about me, kept me from losing my temper. He must truly care for her deeply. He certainly doesn't want a conflict between his mother and future wife before the wedding. I managed to contain my anger, hoping her attitude would change after the marriage. I'm sorry for the inconvenience during your busy schedule. We were just eager to meet the woman who would become Kenneth's wife. Sorry for insisting. I apologized, maintaining my composure as an adult. Amelia responded to my apology with a scoff. Her arrogant demeanor was pervasive. This first meeting with her turned into a bitter memory I would never forget. My son's wedding preparations progressed smoothly afterward. Though smoothly means without much consultation or reporting to us. My son had always mentioned he preferred a small wedding ceremony. He had always talked about wanting a small, family-only ceremony. But in reality, my son's wishes were completely disregarded. The wedding turned out to have nearly 100 guests. This had to be Amelia's doing. While I accepted it, thinking it was fine if my son was happy, I was concerned about her forceful approach. If things continued this way, he would always be under her thumb. I felt he needed to assert himself more. When I shared my concerns with him, he responded with a troubled smile. Sorry for worrying you. But please, let me handle this. A wedding is mostly about the bride, and I want to fulfill her wishes as much as I can. His words left my husband and me with no choice but to remain silent. Considering the size of the wedding, the expenses must be substantial. After discussing with my husband, we decided to give a generous gift. To help the couple as much as we could. On the day of the wedding, the bride and groom's dressing room was overflowing with people. Friends of the bride and groom came and went, greeting them. I even spotted some models, likely colleagues of Amelia. With so many guests, the reception was hectic, a real whirlwind. Cousins and my son's friends were managing the reception desk. It seemed Amelia's co-workers were helping out on her side. We made sure to give our gift before the reception got too busy. After the wedding, what a lavish ceremony it was, relatives commented. It had been a while since I attended such a grand wedding. The ceremony itself was truly magnificent. The incident came to light the day after the wedding. As we were finally taking a breather, our son rushed in, visibly upset. Our usually gentle son was angrier than I'd ever seen him. What are you trying to do, making me look bad? If you're against this marriage, just say it, he shouted, leaving me speechless. With a stern look, he glared at my husband and me alternately. My husband, too, was stunned. Kenneth, calm down, please. What happened? We have no idea what you're talking about, I said, trying to remain calm. Arguing back wouldn't solve anything. It was the first time my son raised his voice at us, and I was far from calm inside. My husband seemed quite shocked too. Seeing my composure, my son seemed to calm down a bit and sat on the living room sofa. It's about the wedding gift. He started. Wedding gift? What about it? Was there a problem? Knowing the wedding would be extravagant, we quickly decided to give generously. We had given $3,000. Was it not enough? I began to worry. Big problem. A $10 wedding gift. Have you ever heard of such a thing? He said, placing the envelope on the table. Indeed, the envelope had my husband's name on it. But I immediately noticed. Something was off. The handwriting wasn't my husband's. So you're saying there was only $10 in the wedding gift envelope? I pressed for confirmation. My son nodded and opened the envelope in front of us. True enough, there was only $10 inside. Last night, Amelia checked it, my son explained. She was in tears, thinking she's not accepted as a wife. Despite saying this, my son's expression showed doubt. Deep down, he knew we wouldn't do such a thing. Kenneth, do you really think we'd do this? You know this handwriting isn't Dad's, right? I responded. Hearing this, my son let out a deep sigh and slumped his shoulders. You're right, Mom. I don't understand how this could have happened either. He admitted, looking distraught. It pained me to see him like this. I reassured him that we had given $3,000, not the amount in the envelope. Why is it $10? We gave $3,000. My husband said, examining the envelope with a puzzled look. Regardless, the $3,000 was mysteriously missing. And in a way that made us look bad. Anger surged within me. This is theft. Let's report it to the police. I suggested to my son and husband. We didn't know where the switch happened, but we needed to clarify how the $3,000 was stolen. It hurt to suspect the friends and colleagues who had helped at the reception. All right. I'll also contact Amelia. My son said, pulling out his mobile phone. He seemed to be explaining that the original gift was $3,000 and this $10 was a fake. Amelia's voice, faintly heard from the receiver, sounded accusing. As if she thought I, who didn't approve of her, was behind this. It seemed she was determined to pin this on me, and the conversation dragged on. This isn't going anywhere. Like Mom said, I'm thinking of reporting this to the police. My son finally said, and I could sense Amelia falling silent. Wait. This doesn't need to involve the police. Amelia's voice became anxious. She was pleading with my son not to go to the police. Then I whispered to my son. Why not ask Amelia to come over? I felt it was better to discuss this with everyone present. My son conveyed this to Amelia and ended the call. She arrived about 15 minutes later. During that time, my son reached out to friends and cousins who managed the reception. Without revealing the missing gift, he checked if any outsiders had accessed the reception area. Everyone said nothing unusual had happened. He only told the truth to his cousin, who then mentioned they had photos from the reception desk and offered to send them. The data arrived on my son's mobile phone shortly after. While we were checking each photo, Amelia arrived. Looking pale and without makeup. Calling the police isn't peaceful, Natalie. Why won't you admit what you've done? This is harassment against me, isn't it? Amelia accused me as soon as she arrived. However, I noticed her eyes darting around uneasily. Her behavior was clearly suspicious. Amelia, calm down. Why would I do such a thing? I never opposed your marriage. On what basis are you accusing me? As Amelia grew more agitated, I became calmer. My husband silently observed the unfolding events. I believe this is a case of theft. Someone switched our wedding gift with this fake. It's a terrible and calculated crime. I think the best course of action is to contact the police and have them investigate," I said, holding the counterfeit gift envelope. Amelia then reached out to snatch the envelope. But I was quick to protect it. It was crucial evidence. I couldn't risk it being damaged right in front of us. "No, this needs to be submitted to the police as evidence," I insisted. Amelia's reaction convinced me, more than ever, that she was involved in this. "Are you trying to harass me by blowing this out of proportion? Kenneth told me you were kind, but this is disappointing. I'm starting to feel anxious about being your DIL," Amelia said, now addressing my husband in a softer tone. When she realized she couldn't sway me, she targeted my husband. But he remained silent, understanding I wasn't capable of such malice. Our mutual trust as a couple made me feel relieved. "You're all being so cruel, as if I'm the liar." "But isn't it Natalie who's lying?" Amelia said, tears welling up. Her tears seemed insincere. "That's right, the liar is you, Amelia," my son calmly said, having been reviewing photos sent to his mobile phone. Amelia looked at his phone in shock, her face turning from pale to ghostly white. "These photos are evidence, Amelia." "Do you have any explanation?" my son asked. Seeing this, Amelia began to tremble. My husband and I looked at the photo on the phone. It was one of the photos taken by my cousins at the reception desk. Behind my cheerful cousins flashing peace signs, there was Amelia reaching for the wedding gifts. I recalled Amelia disappearing from the dressing room in her dress for about 30 minutes, supposedly to greet friends at the reception. My son zoomed in to show Amelia's hands. In one hand, she firmly held a thick envelope, the real wedding gift. In the other, a thin envelope. "This is a fake. I would never do this. It's a doctored photo. It must be Natalie's cousins did it on her instruction," Amelia continued with her strained excuses. She claimed my nephews, who managed the reception, had created a composite photo at my behest. I was astonished at her attempt to wriggle out of the situation. No wonder she was so against reporting this to the police. Who would bother to do such a thing? "Please, use some common sense," I replied. I couldn't help but become exasperated listening to Amelia's far-fetched excuses. My son and husband, silent, observed the exchange between Amelia and me. Their faces screamed, were so appalled, were speechless. "Why would you do this, Amelia? Do you dislike my family that much?" my son asked, to which Amelia did not respond. "Anyway, where is the $3,000? You have it, right, Amelia? You know it was meant to be a contribution to our wedding expenses, not something for you to keep all to yourself, right?" My son probed gently, yet Amelia just hung her head and let the tears fall. "I don't want to report my own wife to the police," he said. Then, as if resigning to the situation, Amelia began to confess. She had a substantial debt due to her extravagant spending habits, often purchasing the outfits she modeled. Her inability to resist her desires led to her debt. Moreover, her obsession with beauty treatments and expensive salon visits only worsened her financial situation. She had tried to clear her debt before the wedding but failed due to the large amount. Hence, she decided to switch the wedding gifts in a desperate attempt to settle her debts. What a blunder it was to open and switch the envelopes at the reception. She must have been panicking to commit such a mistake. "Do you know about Amelia's debts?" I asked my son, who shook his head in response. He then faced Amelia seriously. "Let's get a divorce. I hate lies. Had you told me about your debt, we could have tackled it together. Didn't I ask you to value family?" Yet, you disgraced my parents. I can't be married to you. It's over, he declared. My son is gentle, but he's decisive and stubborn about his principles. Amelia was stunned by his decision for divorce. No, it's a lie, right? I'll return the money. It was just a momentary lapse. The debt, I'll pay it off with the wedding gifts. It's too embarrassing to get divorced right after the wedding, she pleaded, clinging to my son, who remained stoic. Eventually, 3 days post-wedding, my son filed for divorce. Amelia returned to her parents' home. Initially living alone, her parents took her back to keep an eye on her. Her debt was far more than we imagined, much more than what stealing $3,000 could cover. It seemed she had plotted to shift the blame to us and drive a wedge between us and our son. Such shallow thinking. We returned all the wedding gifts we received, along with apologies. Amelia resisted, intending to use the gifts to pay off her debts, but my son didn't allow it. Her return home became the talk of the neighborhood and among friends. Embarrassed, she's now confined to her parents' house, gaining weight and with deteriorating skin. She couldn't continue her modeling career and had to resign. Now unemployed and reclusive, my son sincerely apologized for ever doubting us. He promised to be even more filial than before. Our family bond remained intact, a true relief. Next time my son brings a girlfriend home, I'll make sure to thoroughly assess whether she's the right one. Enough is enough, I'll just say it. Old ladies and kids are nothing but trouble. Please, just leave. Even though my husband was drunk, those were harsh words. Ashley, our granddaughter, left the room crying. Ashley! It was understandable, considering her painstakingly drawn picture was thrown away right in front of her. We might never be able to go back to how things were. Just as I thought this, the doorbell rang. Who could it be at this hour? Could it be Rosalind? Long time no see. Susie! What are you doing here? I was dumbfounded. Then my husband started speaking again. I'm sick of old folks like you. What do you mean? You two can't possibly be. My sister, Susie, looked down at me with a malicious smile. Rosalind. I'm dating Jacob. What? That's right. I'm sorry. I'm going to remarry Susie. I was so shocked that I felt cold sweat all over, and my limbs began to tremble. I'm sorry, but I'll be taking Rosalind's husband. Susie watched me shaking in shock for a while, as if amused. I couldn't stay like this. I had to get back at my husband and sister. Our revenge, mine and Ashley's, began from here. I am Rosalind, 60 years old, living quietly with my husband Jacob, who just retired. Our home is in a peaceful residential area a bit away from the city center, where I ran a flower art class. After Jacob's retirement, although many couples experience worsening relationships, ours seemed fine. It was a bit bothersome that Jacob wanted more attention than during his working days. It was confusing at first, but maybe this was also something fresh and good. Jacob enjoyed his hobbies of fishing and chess, and I truly enjoyed interacting with friends I met through my classes. Walking our own pace in this second phase of life wasn't so bad. Just as I was starting to think this, an event happened that changed our lives. What? Neville had an accident. No way. It had to be a mistake. My hand holding the receiver trembled, and my mind went blank. I couldn't believe it. Jacob, too, seemed unable to grasp the situation, standing there in shock. About 3 days ago, our son and his family had gone on a trip using a long weekend with their son. The accident happened on their way back from visiting a tourist spot in New Jersey. I couldn't easily believe it.
God, please, let them be safe. Just their lives.
With a prayerful heart, we rushed from our home to a hospital in New Jersey. But what awaited us there were the already deceased, cold bodies of our son and his wife.
It can't be. No. Neville. Wake up, Neville.
The cause of the accident was apparently a large truck that had drifted into the opposing lane because the driver fell asleep. The head-on collision destroyed the car, warping the front beyond recognition. Neville and his wife, Tiffany, were almost instantly killed. Neville, who worked hard every day as a salesperson. Despite the doctor's desperate efforts, neither Neville nor Tiffany could be saved. In the cold hospital corridor, silent screams and sobs echoed. Even the usually stoic Jacob cried out loud this time. Our only son, Neville, was just 39 years old at that time. The only survivor was our granddaughter, Ashley. God had taken our only son from us. Ashley, left alone, stood frozen with a pale face, not moving an inch. From the window swayed by the cold wind, I could see rain clouds drawing near. Before I knew it, the year had changed, and it was already February. Half a year had passed since the day of that life-changing accident. In these 6 months, we barely had time to mourn as we somehow managed to finish the funeral for Neville and his wife and rushed through everything. And so, we took in our granddaughter Ashley, who had become an orphan, and began raising her. We, as a couple, were doing our best to get our new life on track. Half a year had passed, but our time seemed to have stopped on that day. While I was busy with housework and struggling with child rearing after a long break, Jacob just absent-mindedly stared out the window. At that time, I hadn't yet realized that Jacob had changed since the accident. That day, when Ashley hadn't come back for a while, I peeked outside through the back door, and the air outside was cold enough to freeze my lungs.
Was it track and field practice today?
Watching my breath turn white in the air, I was about to close the door when Ashley came home. I'm home.
Welcome back. It must have been cold, right? Come in.
For a while after her parents' death, Ashley had closed off her heart and hardly spoke to us. But lately, she's started to show expressions typical of a middle schooler. It might be a while before we see her true smile again. She must be trying in her own way. It was awkward, but Ashley seemed to be trying hard to fit into this new family structure. Ashley is just 14 years old. In the 8th grade. Losing both parents at such a sensitive age and being forced to move and live with grandparents. Thinking about Ashley's feelings was heart-wrenching. But, contrary to my efforts to save Ashley's heart, Jacob's heart remained empty. Jacob, Ashley has come back.
Ah.
Jacob briefly responded and turned his gaze back to the TV. Just when she was starting to open up to us a little. Jacob had always enjoyed drinking, but his alcohol consumption clearly increased after Neville's death. Perhaps it was his way of forgetting the pain of losing his only son. Thinking so, I chose to overlook it. After dinner, Ashley efficiently cleared the dishes, stood at the kitchen sink, and helped with the washing up.
Grandma, today, my drawing got an award at school.
Really? That's wonderful. Ashley's landscape painting, done at the end of the year, was selected for the cover of the school's Centennial Anniversary Journal.
Having my drawing on the cover makes me so happy.
It was the first genuine smile Ashley had shown us since she started living with us.
Grandpa, listen.
Ashley. You should probably study more than focusing on your drawings.
Jacob.
It's the truth, isn't it? Indeed, Ashley was never good at studying. Her grades in math and science were terrible in the end-of-year exams. Therefore, I had to teach her late into the night every day. Starting over with child-rearing is a daunting task. Even for blood-related grandparents, it's never easy. In fact, there might be more conflicts. Jacob's attitude towards Ashley never improved. It was as if he was taking out his grief over losing Neville in the accident on her, being cold. I had been worried about my husband, who had taken to heavy drinking and becoming reclusive since the accident. Late at night, after Ashley had gone to bed, I approached Jacob.
Jacob, what was that attitude towards Ashley earlier? What about it?
My husband was still in the kitchen, calling it a nightcap and drinking wine.
That girl has finally started to brighten up a bit and can go to school properly, right?
So? Going to school is expected, isn't it?
Even so. Telling her to study more. You didn't have to say it like that.
What about you? Haven't you been all over Ashley lately? She can study on her own, can't she?
She might struggle with her studies, but she's good at art and sports. Isn't that enough?
Neville was good at both studies and sports, like me. Ashley doesn't take after her father at all.
Stop it! No matter what you say, Neville isn't coming back. All we can do now is raise Ashley right. Please, let's cooperate.
Look, Rosalind. I don't know about you, but I had my own plans for my second life. But Jacob started to say, but stopped. No, it's fine. It's over. Ashley was supposed to be a precious treasure for both Rosalind and Jacob. But Neville and his wife's death had negatively impacted the relationship between grandparents and granddaughter. I went to Ashley's room quietly to check on her. Ashley, I'm sorry. A single tear was rolling down her cheek as she breathed quietly in sleep. I gently wiped away the tear and silently returned to my bedroom. That night, Jacob came home drunk late.
Hey, I'm home.
Jacob!
Where have you been until this late? Where does it matter? It's none of your business.
For the past few months, Jacob has been relieving stress by going out and drinking almost every night. Inevitably, arguments and conflicts within the family increased. Jacob these days seems like a completely different person from before. Staggering drunk into the living room, Jacob slumped onto the sofa and demanded,
Bring me some water.
Reluctantly, I handed him a glass of water. After finishing the water, Jacob began to talk about something unexpected. Today, I met your sister at the bar.
What? Susie.
I had a bad feeling. Though Susie and I are sisters, we have different mothers and are half-siblings. There's a significant age gap between us. Susie, the daughter of my father's second wife, is 47 years old, 13 years my junior. Single, she maintains her beauty well beyond her years. A few years ago, she launched a cosmetics brand called Jupiter and achieved success, even being featured in magazines. Susie could be considered beautiful, but she was a nasty piece of work, using men to climb the social ladder. Therefore, it's not entirely false to say I was a bit envious of her flashy social life from a young age. Fortunately, my stepmother, who was her mother, raised us without showing favoritism. Perhaps that's why I was able to avoid feeling inferior to the beautiful Susie. The success of her cosmetics brand, which she claims to have started with her own funds, seemed implausible. I suspected she charmed men into becoming her patrons and investing in her business. Hey, Rosalind. Have you looked in the mirror lately? Casually, I glanced at the mirror hanging on the living room wall. Reflected there was my face, looking much older than I had imagined.
Is that really me?
I reflexively looked away from the mirror. I couldn't bear to look directly at it. That was the reality. There, tired from childcare, housework, and stress, was my own reflection. I felt like I understood what Jacob wanted to say. Susie, and you are completely different. Are you really sisters? In Jacob's eyes looking at me, I sensed mockery. Trembling with anger, I found no words to reply.
Yes, so what?
Just that your sister still looks beautiful with age. Unlike someone I know. Overwhelmed with intense anger and turmoil, I managed to suppress the urge to scream, briskly closed the door, and left the room. Being compared to my sister in terms of beauty and demeanor brought back painful memories. I never thought I'd face such treatment from my husband at this age. After closing the door, I couldn't hold back and quietly sobbed.
Grandma!
It seemed Ashley had overheard our shouting match. From then on, the relationship between Jacob and me rapidly deteriorated. Far from showing any remorse, Jacob's attitude towards Ashley and me became even more arrogant. His drinking habits remained bad, and he even started coming home late in the morning. Jacob had a fair amount of experience with women before we married, having dated a few others. I was worried but felt powerless to change anything. Jacob continued his nightly outings, and recently, I stopped admonishing him, silently condoning his behavior. He no longer listened to me. Though I had somewhat given up, I still hoped he would return to the kind person he once was. I can't afford to space out. I snapped back to reality. Thank you for today, Rosalind, said a student of my flower art class as we cheerfully exchanged words, and I smiled as I saw them out. I had closed the class for a while after Neville and his wife passed away, but when I reopened it, the students quickly returned. Nowadays, conversations with Jacob, who neglects the home, were virtually non-existent. He barely spoke to Ashley either. Today was the day for the flower arrangement course. The room was filled with colorful flowers, and a sweet scent wafted through the class. Interacting with the students in the class was my only joy and salvation. After everyone left, I began to tidy up the classroom. The dark blue vase was my favorite. It was something Jacob had bought for me a long time ago. I pulled a deep red rose from the vase and gazed at it. The luxurious rose, illuminated by the setting sun shining through the window, reminded me of Susie, whom Jacob had mentioned meeting recently. Jacob's words haunted me again. Have you looked in a mirror lately? A woman's worth isn't determined solely by her physical appearance. But do I have anything that surpasses Susie now?
Grandma!
Hearing that brought me back to the moment. Today is Jacob's birthday. I remembered I had planned to make steak for dinner, his favorite. I hurriedly turned to the voice. Ashley had drawn something for Jacob. Thank you. I'm sure Grandpa will come home early today, I said, though calling Jacob yielded no answer. It's a special day, yet. That night, Jacob finally came home past 10 p.m. The smell of alcohol and cigarettes lingered as he passed through the hallway. He had been drinking again today. Ashley, Grandpa's home. Ashley was holding something that looked like a piece of drawing paper.
Happy birthday, Grandpa. I made this for you. I hope you like it.
It was Jacob's 65th birthday today.
This is supposed to be me? Doesn't look like me at all. Ashley, you always waste your time on useless things.
Jacob crumpled the portrait Ashley had given him and threw it into the trash.
Jacob! How could you do that? Ashley made that for you. Let me make this clear. Old ladies and kids are nothing but trouble. Get out!
Even if he was drunk, those were cruel words. Ashley left the room crying.
Ashley!
We might never be able to go back to how things were. Just as I thought this, the doorbell rang. Who could it be at this hour? Could it be Rosalind?
It's been a while. Susie! Why are you here?
I was stunned. Then my husband spoke again. I'm sick of old folks like you.
What do you mean? You two can't possibly be.
Susie looked down at me with a malicious smile. Rosalind, I'm dating Jacob.
What?
That's right. Sorry. I'm going to remarry Susie. I was in shock, trembling from head to toe.
I'm sorry, Rosalind. I'll be taking your husband.
Susie watched me shaking in shock for a while, seemingly amused.
Susie! Do you understand what you're saying? Of course, I'm telling the truth.
She said with a smirk and stood up.
That's how it is. So, I'll be leaving now.
I couldn't sleep at all that night, overwhelmed by shock. For the first time, I learned that people can't cry when they're too shocked. Less than a year after Neville's death, Ashley and I were plunged back into hell. 2 months later, Jacob and I officially divorced. It was a very sudden end to our marriage. It was an anticlimactically swift end to our marriage of 37 years since I married Jacob at 24. Afterward, Ashley and I left the house, seeking refuge with relatives. Everything precious was lost. I was overwhelmed by a sense of powerlessness and sought salvation with my uncle's family, praying for help. Spring is approaching. The warm spring breeze gently sweeps through the fields. My uncle's house is in a rural part of California. Despite the peacefulness of the spring sunshine, my heart was heavy. I had just learned that Jacob and Susie officially remarried.
Grandma, what's wrong?
Nothing, dear, I said, putting Alstroemeria flowers into a basket one by one. I was preparing flowers for shipment to a local fresh market. The head of the household we were staying with was my Uncle Rodney. Rodney owned several forests and fields in the area, cultivating flowers for shipment to the metropolitan area. And I was allowed to work on his farm. Rodney's family, including his wife and cousins, were all kind. I like flowers, so working on the farm doesn't bother me. But, Ashley, I'm sorry we had to move again. This was the second time Ashley had to relocate since her parents' accident. I'm sad about Grandpa, but I think this is for the best. This region, warm and comfortable, with the sea and mountains nearby, surprisingly suited Ashley well. She became more energetic about painting, joined the art club at her new school, and started attending painting classes. I do think about reopening my flower art class and becoming independent here someday. But after Neville's death, Jacob's affair, the conflict with Susie, and then the divorce, too much has happened, and I haven't been able to sort it all out in my mind. Grandma, I have something I want to talk to you about. What is it? About Susie. Look at this. Ashley showed me her mobile phone screen.
Susie!
I looked puzzled. Peering into the screen, I saw a familiar name among many.
This is...
It was about Susie and her company, Jupiter Cosmetics. There were reports that a face wash from Jupiter Cosmetics contained misleading ingredients. The product had used amounts of a currently regulated ingredient well above the legal limit, exposing the falsehood. Many people suffered severe allergic reactions, some even developed anaphylactic shock. Information posted on the internet spread quickly. Ashley noticed it through information shared by a friend who had used the cosmetics. Susie is going to face a lot of trouble for this. And Grandpa too.
Yes. Since it involves Grandpa, they might come to you for help.
It's okay, Ashley. You don't have to worry about that. They are now living a life that has nothing to do with us.
Okay, I understand.
I made that firm decision. A few days later, Susie's company's scandal was already on the news. According to the news, there were about 300 victims, with a legal team demanding $700,000 in compensation. Rosalind, it must be unsettling to see your own sister like that on the news.
I've caused Rodney so much trouble because of Susie and Jacob. We should have nothing to do with those kids anymore. A disgrace to the family.
Yes.
And who knows what kind of trouble they'll bring in the future.
Rodney seemed to have warned everyone in the house not to let Susie and her ilk anywhere near. No one could be pleased with Susie, who stole her sister's husband and then caused a national scandal. My feelings were complicated. My heart was restless. But my fears were realized. A few days later, I received a call from an unknown number. Hello, is this Rosalind? Incredibly, it was Jacob, not Susie.
What do you want now?
You're cold. I have a favor to ask. No.
Just hear me out. I officially married Susie recently, and I took on a role at Jupiter, but with all this mess.
And what about it?
I need money. Your father was quite wealthy, wasn't he? Didn't you inherit a good sum when he passed? What? You want to take my father's inheritance too? Don't joke with me. Don't contact me again.
The audacity to cheat with his wife's sister, abandon his family, and now try to take her inheritance. My anger reached its breaking point. I struggled to keep my composure so Ashley wouldn't notice. Grandma, I'm home. Ashley had returned. Perhaps there was track and field practice today. Bathed in the early summer sun, Ashley's face was slightly sunburned.
What's wrong? Eh? What do you mean? Because, Grandma, you're crying.
I hastily touched my face, realizing tears were streaming down. Sorry. I didn't mean to involve you, Ashley. I'm truly sorry. Unable to stop the tears, I covered my face with my hands and broke down. Then a soft hand touched my head. It was Ashley's. Grandma, don't cry. I could tell Ashley was looking at me worriedly. All the emotions I had been holding back overflowed. Throughout, Ashley kept stroking my head. Grandma, you haven't done anything wrong. I couldn't respond. Was that really true? If only I had paid more attention to Jacob after Neville's death. If only I had been more understanding of Jacob's feelings. If Neville and his family hadn't had that accident, would our fate have been different? But now, everything was irretrievable.
Grandma, let's be happy together. Can we really be happy?
If Grandma wishes for it, we surely can.
Yes.
I'm with you, so it'll be okay.
Hee hee.
I couldn't help but cry and laugh at the same time. For the first time, I truly appreciated that Ashley had survived. That night, I made a decision. I decided to finally demand compensation from Jacob and Susie in the divorce settlement. Ashley, I have something to discuss with you.
What's up?
I'm thinking of starting the flower art class again. What do you think? Ashley smiled.
I think it's great. I totally support it.
I believed that having a substantial amount of money was absolutely necessary to raise Ashley properly. Ashley accepted this proposal with a smile. Rodney's family is all very kind. I've never felt uncomfortable here, but I started to think about beginning a new life with Ashley. Caring for the beautiful flowers on this farm deepened my love for them. Flower art was one of the lessons our mother had us take as children. Susie quit halfway through, but I continued because I loved flowers. A few weeks later, I received a call from Susie.
Rosalind, what's the meaning of this? A claim for compensation from the divorce now? I just got a call from the lawyer. It's my right. For the treatment I received from you and Jacob. It's your fault for losing your husband to me. It's not my fault. Your words are as disjointed as ever. That's why I hate you. Always acting so smart and playing the good person, liked by everyone. I despise that about you. You felt that way?
It was surprising. You always had people around you, cherished by Dad and Mom. Someone like you could never understand my feelings.
Susie, you know, my company is finished now. Sued by the victims, $700,000 in damages. And now, a compensation claim from the divorce? Don't joke.
Susie, I've always felt inferior to you. We were the same, weren't we? Realizing this now. But I can't back down this time. This is also for Neville. Neville, watch over us from heaven. I will surely raise your daughter well. Reconciling with Susie and Jacob in this lifetime might be difficult. But that's okay. I'll live by my beliefs. I've decided to be happy with Ashley. The following week, 2 pieces of good news arrived from school. One was that Ashley had excelled in track and field, qualifying for a competition in hurdles. And the other.
Really? Ashley's painting. Really? Auntie, I get to go to the Netherlands.
I couldn't believe it at first. Ashley's painting had won a competition. She had entered a summer painting contest organized by a famous art supply company. Her painting won the grand prize and would be temporarily exhibited in a renowned museum in the Netherlands. Besides the prize money, the winner received travel and accommodation expenses. This news made it to the newspapers, and eventually to Jacob. He called again. Hello, is this Ashley? It's been a while. How are you? I'm fine. I saw the newspaper. It's amazing you won a prize. Let your grandfather see it too. I can't. It will be displayed in a museum in the Netherlands. I heard there's prize money too. Can you get Rosalind for me? I want to talk to her. No. Grandma said she won't give you any of the prize money. And
I wasn't talking about the money, really.
Jacob had unexpectedly visited the house a few days before, begging Rosalind for reconciliation. Given the timing, it was inevitable to think he was after the prize money. Rosalind had no intention of starting over with Jacob. By this time, Jacob was completely worn down. The financial losses from Susie's cosmetic business, the collective lawsuit, and now the divorce compensation had nearly driven them mad. Or maybe they were already broken. Susie's beauty was gone, looking even older than her age. Without any care for her appearance or makeup, on the verge of insanity. The price of an affair, stealing a husband from her own sister, was unimaginably high. After scrambling for funds, we ended up with a $500,000 debt. Jacob and Susie were completely worn out, both mentally and physically. Their relationship was on the brink of collapse just after getting married.
I wish I had never married you. You're useless. What? You're the one who seduced me first. I'm the one who got deceived. Give me back my life.
It was then Jacob realized Susie had never truly loved him. Susie, sensing her cosmetics business was in trouble, had been looking for someone to marry and live off. Jacob finally understood she had just used and discarded him. This affair was also partly a revenge against Rosalind, whom Susie had always been jealous of. But it was all too late now. Gone were the money, home, family, love, and even memories. Except for his self-destructive and nearly insane new wife. Later, I heard Jacob and Susie started working at a classic hotel far up north, living there as well. Jacob had held a respectable position during his active career. Susie, formerly a cosmetics company executive, must have struggled in the new environment. But my life had been freed from those two. I had no interest in meddling or being meddled with anymore. There was just one thing that nagged at me. That classic hotel was very close to the last place Neville's family had visited before their accident. The autumn leaves would be beautiful by now. Could they be, for Neville's memorial? It was mere speculation. But Neville was Rosalind and Jacob's irreplaceable only son. That was a fact. In hindsight, everything started with that accident. No one to blame, no one who could be blamed. Just a sorrowful, regretful memory. In my heart, I silently bid farewell to Jacob and Susie, who had betrayed me. And as seasons turned, we faced the second spring since the accident. With the funds we had, Ashley and I bought a house a little away from Rodney's, starting anew. We moved close enough so Ashley wouldn't have to change middle schools. That's where I finally reopened the flower art class. Close to the station, the location was perfect. Ashley's students' wanted poster was well received, attracting many students right away.
Grandma, the painting displayed at the museum is back.
In Ashley's hands was a painting of Neville, his wife Tiffany, and Ashley herself, gazing at a flower field illuminated by the setting sun. It's beautiful every time I see it. Neville and Tiffany would be happy.
Yeah, I think so too.
We smiled at each other.
What do you think about displaying this painting in the flower art class for a while? Of course.
Ashley's painting was actually going to be donated to the museum afterward. But wanting to make her grandmother happy, Ashley readily agreed to Rosalind's request.
Grandma, you know. I'm not angry at Grandpa and them anymore. Is that okay?
At first, I was surprised by her sudden declaration. But at the same time, I felt a resonance with Ashley's thoughts. Ashley, you can do as you like.
Okay.
Whatever the feeling, it's yours, Ashley. Who you forgive or don't forgive is up to you.
Thank you.
Yes, those two had already received enough punishment. I should also set myself free. At 62. Life is still ahead of me. Above Rosalind and Ashley, the future was shining brightly, waiting to be embraced.